It's been a while since I last saw Alexander Dugin, a celebrated Russian philosopher and genocide apologist, mentioned in any kind of respectable context.
However, it is beyond dispute that the Russian leader frequently speaks of his country's role as a bulwark against the moral decadence of the West, and that he speaks in philosophical and theological terms to a degree unthinkable in a Western leader, all of whom tend towards a condescension in such matters that has reached its apotheosis in Canada's Justin Trudeau, New Zealand's Jacinda Ardern, and US Vice President Kamala Harris. He also collaborates in his thinking with a genuine philosopher, Alexander Dugin.
Thank you, Mr. Double Speed Jordan Peterson. Anyway, of course all of that would depend on what we call respectable. Perhaps my attention was too diverted toward all those missiles and drones, paying friendly visits to my country's cities and towns, to pay attention to the new and updated free speech activism happening within the putrid depths of Elon Musk's social media platform. Meanwhile, Mr. Carlson there was toiling away day and night to bring us the freshest and most unbiased takes on the great Russians of the modern era. As not everybody is willing to subject themselves to the singular sensations of the recorded voices of said people entering their eardrums, I took it upon myself to suffer in your stead. All for science, all for your sanity. Let's do a recap. Carlson introduces Dugin as a philosopher persecuted for his ideas. Dugin explains to Carlson why the Anglophone countries evince patterns of destructive and destabilizing behavior. Anglo-Saxon Protestants are to blame. They introduced individualism, which disintegrates all of our collective societal identities. Crowned with its victory over communism and fascism in the 20th century, liberalism continued on its way toward liberating us from the last two such identities, the sexual one and our humanity. Carlson reshapes the narrative by introducing two types of liberalism, the old classical one and the new one. Dugin plays along to cater to an average Trumpist or a disenfranchised Petersonian intellectual. Thus, the old liberalism cared for democracy and the freedom of an individual in relation to the government, while the accursed new one has as its aim the suppression of the majority by minorities. Carlson seems appalled at the prescriptivism of the new liberals, who enforce progressivism as the only acceptable ideology. Now, a short advertisement of Dugin's book, hidden from the inquisitive gazes by the horrid liberals. What is the next step after we've been made liberated from everything, including our humanity? Asketh Carlson. Dugin proclaims his love for science fiction and the film The Matrix in particular. All those films contain a self-fulfilling prophecy, leading to a grim future devoid of the traditional lifestyle, specifically very high birth rates. We are being programmed to bring forth this political project by our progressive masters. Dugin finishes profusely with many an accolade for Putin. Carlson is very thankful for the interview. Now let us leave these titans to their post-coital bliss and have a closer look at this peculiar piece of verbal pornography. First of all, how is Dugin portrayed in this interview? How is his image being constructed? Mind you, the interview omits any mention of war, apart from Tucker's remark or song that Dugin's book is not about it. Neither is there a fair treatment, or any at all, of his thoughts on those peoples Russia wants to subjugate. To the contrary, he is explicitly said to not be a political figure, but instead simply an anti-Soviet dissident and an advocate of philosophical ideas some find offensive. And it is because of those, according to Carlson, that the Ukrainian government disposed of his daughter. Moreover, the Biden administration banned his book for big ideas contained within. And yeah, for him being an advisor to Putin. This censorship is, as we come to learn further on, part of a plot by liberals, the bad ones, to silence non-progressive ideas. Mr. Carlson, isn't book banning more of a Christian reactionary thing? Like, to save the moral fabric of society from tearing? Or some shit? Well, an intermediary conclusion is due. Dugin is yet another persecuted Christian, like Tucker's audience, of course, whose ideas are slightly inconvenient to the bad liberal mob, and is demonized accomplices, Biden and Ukraine. A little bit of omission by sirens and shifts in focus, and there we are. No trace of our familiar imperialist and warmonger. Neither is there a medieval Orthodox lunatic. Speaking of lunacy, worthy of notice is the setting of the conversation. Dugin is invited to be an outside expert observer who has valuable comments on the societal issues and ailments of the Anglophone countries. With his usual finesse, Carlson suggests that our guest philosopher answer a maximally unbiased, loaded question.
My question to you is, what do you think is happening in the English language countries? And I said, all of them. United States, Canada, Great Britain, New Zealand, Australia, all at once decided to seemed to turn against themselves. You had this great turmoil, and some of the behaviors seemed very self-destructive.
Dugin accepts the invitation to feast on the brains of Carlson's target audience, chronically hungry for the scraps of the pseudo-intellectual's table. Ensue a turbid history of Anglo-Saxon moral and societal downfall. It all started 500 years ago, when the Protestants sowed the first seeds of future destruction of our hallowed world order. The original sin of the societies they built is individualism, through which they define the workings of the human nature at the expense of everything else which transcends the individual. Starting with the collective identity enjoyed by the followers of the Catholic Church and the breaking away from a European empire. Alas, Dugin was not specific enough which one, but sounds like a terrifying crime, as all proper Christians must owe their coming to prominence to this or that imperial authority. So, one by one, the links joining us together dissolved. Each of them was used to get rid of the previous one and in turn be sacrificed to the Moloch of individualism, who had then no use for a tool which had outlived its purpose. To illustrate, Protestantism was ousted by atheism and secularism. Nation-states helped to get free from empires, but for lack of further utility were abandoned in favor of a civic society? Not sure I got that right. I quit drinking quite some time ago. Finally, the last bastion of tradition, the family, was eliminated. Now the time has come for the last two collective identities, the gender identity and our self-identification as humans. The grim march of the Anglo-Saxon liberators has reached the point of making the former optional, thence the LGBT, trans people and SJWs who tower above its wings. And soon the latter will fall prey to the transhumanist agenda. That barrage of stock phrases should have been enough to bring Tucker and his chosen flock to an orgasm, but reminiscing about altar boys and the good old covert homosexuality of a good conservative Christian proved insufficient to fulfill their edging fantasy, so one more round of stroking the classical liberalism phallus was commissioned. Our philosopher, urged on by the smell of blood of his intellectual victims, switches gears ever so slightly and divides liberals into two camps. The old liberals who wish to protect their individual rights against the state, and the new woke liberals who revile the old understanding of individualism and force everyone to acquiesce to the obligation of being a progressive, all under threat of cancellation and being called bad words. This progressivism does not take kindly to the resurgence of old discarded ideas. Finally, it shall lead to the liberation from individuality itself. Oh, the sweet release.
For individuals. So you are invited to liberate yourself from individuality, to go further in that direction.
In our short recap, enough was said about the liberals' political manifesto, which dooms us to the gloom of our inhuman future. So it's time for the main character of the interview, a fated hero who is meant to bring us all salvation from the godless dystopia of the Anglo-Saxons. Enter Putin, the person whose role is to rally against the globalist progressives, which make the US government inimical toward the bastion of all the traditional values, which is Russia. Quite unlike others, he is a strong leader who is not afraid to announce his own political alternative: traditional family, Christianity, and sovereignty. The
particularity and speciality of the Russian civilization as some special type of world vision that
has entered the metaphysical battle against progressivist malaise, Russophobia its symptom. Thus spake Dugin. All in all, the interview is crafted to make the listener add one more controversial thinker, cancelled by the libs, to their inventory of unapologetic conservatives. It matters not whether Dugin's values actually align with that of the audience. The aim is to make the listener sympathize with the supposedly unjustly persecuted philosopher by means of overloading their senses with standard anti-LGBT, anti-progressivist, anti-trans, and anti-federal government platitudes. This sweet stream of cozy nonsense is designed to prettify the corroding filth of Dugin's actual views, if placed in their proper context, reinforce the false dichotomy of a grand planetary conflict of progressivism versus traditionalism, and feeds right into the nostalgia for a society dominated by the Christian ideology. That misplaced nostalgia being the glue which brings the American and the European reactionaries together. And if one goes blindly down one of those roads, all of them lead to Putin, a messiah befitting their cause. This kind of propaganda blurs the line between civilization and barbarism. The barbarian no longer comes to be viewed as a brute, a slaughterer. Now, he is similar unto everyone else. It's just that they're better fed and have more wealth. He's guilty of his fight for his own place under the sun, a misunderstood noble savage. Or are we the true savages for this matter?
Are we degenerate in a profoundly threatening manner?
Yes, you fucking are. Vile, gaslighting degenerates, indeed threatening our civilization. And we owe you no apology for calling you out for what you are.